And all of us are in need or desire of healing, whether we know it or not. And the reason for that is because our healing is the vehicle through which we know God more. And who doesn't want to know God more, right? Right. And so, I was thinking about this whole topic, and one of the phrases that kept popping through my mind was that little phrase from way back when that said, "Into every life a little rain must fall." Do you remember that little phrase? Really annoying, don't you think? I mean, really annoying. Not at all positive, not at all encouraging. And I remember when I first used to hear that phrase, I used to think, oh my gosh, that sounds so negative. Into every life, a little rain must fall. And I just thought, who wants to buy into that? But now that I've grown up, I hear the wisdom in those words. I hear the wisdom in recognizing that all of us in our lives, all of us have opportunities to know God more through our healing. All of us have challenges at times. All of us have situations. All of us have upset at times that does not set well with us. We have opportunities and challenges like this that affect our loved ones. And to me, this is the little rain that falls. Now, honestly, sometimes that little rain is like a rain shower, yeah. Sometimes it's like a thunderstorm, right? Yeah. I see the heads, yeah. And sometimes it is a dang hurricane. You know what I mean? I mean, really, because we experience things in our minds. We experience things in our bodies. And we experience things within our soul journeys. And all of these things are the fertile ground, or perhaps we'll say the raindrops, through which we come to reach out and we look for something bigger and greater than ourselves. And what we are looking for is the presence of God to restore us back to our wholeness. In Unity, we have two co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. And our whole movement began with healing. And that is why in Unity we focus so much on healing as transformation and also healing as spiritual empowerment. You see, back in the day, over 100 some years ago, our beloved Myrtle had tuberculosis, and she was told that she was going to die. She had a family. She had been a sickly person all her life. And here she was, and she was told, you have 6 months to live. You need to get your affairs in order, because tuberculosis was otherwise known as a death sentence back then. But she did something remarkable. She didn't try to cure her tuberculosis alone. She didn't just run from doctor to doctor and stop there. She didn't give up. And these are all the things that we do as human beings. But she did something different. She heard words of truth that brought her to the core of her being, and they shook her. She heard the words, you are a child of God, and therefore you do not inherit sickness. And as she allowed those words to fill her and permeate her in her mind, her body, and in her soul, within a few short years, she was healed. And so we look at her mighty example, and we see the possibility that exists when we ourselves reach out for our own healing experience. We recognize in her example that we are not alone in trying to fix. We are not alone in trying to cure our problems, our maladies, our challenges, our situations. But there is a knowingness that the Spirit of God lives within us. And that Spirit of God is so powerful. It is so strong. It is so filled with truth that no matter what our condition or situation is, that power is greater, and it will bring to us our healing. Those are pretty powerful words, but they're not just words. Remember that unity is a practical movement. It is practical Christianity, meaning that we practice the teachings of Jesus, our way shower. And when we hold in health and healing that our healing is ours and that all things are possible as our co-founders taught us, we begin to live in a new way. We begin to embrace our wholeness in mind, body, and soul in a whole new way. And through that experience, we are healed. I want to share with you a wonderful example that comes from the teachings of Jesus. In his 3 years of ministry, there were so many healings that were recorded. And the typical understanding of Jesus' teachings is that Jesus had a magic wand within his being, that he was the only one that had this divine principle, and he sort of zapped people right and left. And you might believe that, but I'm going to tell you right now, you're mistaken. You're mistaken. Because the very essence that Jesus had within his being 2,000 years ago is the very essence that lives in you. Yes, absolutely. So I want you to take a moment and just look at yourself. Just look down at your beautiful, radiant self. And know that you are not only what you see. You are not only what you see. Within you lies all the power that is needed to bring forward your healing. Because within you lives this divine energy, this source of good. The very source that Jesus brought forward and assisted others with in their healing. You don't need to go anywhere to get it as if you don't have it. It lives in you. And the beautiful thing about Jesus' work is that he knew that, and by his example, he called the disciples forward, and he's called all of us forward to know this truth. The healing power of the Christ energy, whatever name you give it, the healing power of the Christ energy lives in all of us. I want to share with you a wonderful story of healing. It's about a young boy who had epilepsy, and it's found in the Gospel of Mark in the 9th chapter. Someone from the crowd heard Jesus, and they asked him, they said, "Teacher, I brought you my son. He has a spirit that makes him unable to speak, and whenever it seizes him, it dashes him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth, and he becomes rigid. And I asked your disciples to cast it out, but they could not do it." And so Jesus answered. He spoke to the disciples, and he said, "How much longer must I be among you? How much longer must I teach you?" And then he spoke to the Father, and he said, "Bring him to me." The boy was brought to him, and when the spirit within him saw him, it immediately convulsed the boy, and he fell on the ground, and he rolled about, foaming at the mouth. And Jesus asked the Father, "How long has this been happening to him?" The Father said, "From childhood. It has often cast him into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you're able to do anything, please have pity on us and help us." Jesus turned to the Father and said, "You are able. All things are possible to the one who believes." And immediately the father of the child cried out, "I believe. Help my unbelief." And when Jesus saw that, a crowd came running together, and he spoke to the unclean spirit, and he said to it, You spirit that keeps running together from this boy, speaking and hearing, go now, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." And after crying and convulsing terribly, the spirit came out, and by the hand that lifted him up, the boy was now able to stand. In this story, we hear a number of valuable lessons. We hear that Jesus exemplifies the Christ within, and that he stood in authority of knowing that in and through God all things are possible, and he did not waver from that knowing and faith. We also see that he had compassion for the young boy who struggled with epilepsy, with illness. But he called the father, and that was a really interesting thing to do. He called the father and said, "You have the power in you. You have the power in you to call forward the Spirit and to heal." And before he spoke to the Father, he talked to the disciples, the true students that he nurtured, loved, and supported. And he said, "How long do I have to keep telling you this? How long do you not trust the power in you? Know the truth and bring it forward." And so we see in this story a mighty, mighty lesson for all of us here. We recognize that we are not just how we identify ourselves. We are not just Anastasia and Marcy. We are not just Scott and Sherry. But we are indeed beings infused with the living Christ within us. And as we call forward this energy, we open to the power of healing, not only for ourselves, but for all. We call forward this power of healing that restores us to the harmony that we seek. And so I really invite you to take this in and to really know the power of healing that lives in you. And know that whatever your condition, whether it be in your mind, whether it be in your thoughts and in your beliefs and in old patterns that you carry in your ways of thinking, that those things can be healed. And if you hold ideas and thoughts within your body, if you hold temporary or chronic conditions that are challenging and difficult, know that those are not the truth of who you are, that they can be healed, and that you can feel and know your wholeness beyond a condition, no matter the outcome. And within your soul journey, within your soul's journey in this life, no matter whether it is an easy path or a challenging one, know that in your soul journey that you can be healed and healthy and whole. And that anything that you have experienced, be it traumatic, being it a tragedy, being it a condition that has perpetuated, know that it has no power over you, and that your healing and your wholeness is far greater than that experience. This is the power of the living Christ within us. And we cannot do it on our own. It is coming forward when we open to the divinity and when we live and reside in the divinity within us. Charles Fillmore, in Jesus Christ Heals, tells us this wonderful and famous quote that comes from him. I am now in the presence of pure being and immersed in the Holy Spirit of life, love, and wisdom. I acknowledge thy presence and power, O blessed Spirit, and in thy divine wisdom now erase from my mind my mortal limitations, and from thy pure substance of love bring into manifestation my world according to thy perfect law. When we live in the presence of pure being, when we open to the power of God, when we immerse ourselves in that power, we call forward the kingdom of heaven. We call forward the good, the highest good for ourselves and all others in the greatest way possible. And so I invite you to hold this truth as a reality, not only as a lofty thought, or not only as an occasional thought, but as a reality. And I invite you to open to your healing today in a new way. I want to share with you 2 different spiritual approaches that are used to healing, and both of them are very helpful for us depending on what the wisdom of God within our heart calls us to do. And so the first approach that I like to use in healing is what I call the classical unity metaphysical approach to healing. And it is the approach in which we call on the power of faith, and we stand in our spiritual authority, and we work metaphysically, meaning symbolically, with our thoughts and our ideas and our beliefs to bring forward our highest good. So when we are using a metaphysical approach to healing, what we do is we work with affirmations that are statements of truth, and we work with visualization to hold and see that highest good coming forward. And we stand from the Christ of our being, knowing that that which we desired is already given to us in God. Are you familiar with that metaphysical approach, right? Yeah, and so that is a very powerful, powerful way to approach your healing. And it is one for those of us that want to learn to stand more fully in the authority of the divine within. It is one that helps us grow immensely. Now, there's another approach as well, and I call it the mystical approach. And this approach is one in which we really challenge that ego part of us, that doing part of us. Are there any doers here? Right? So we really challenge that part of us, and we open to letting go and letting be. And so when we open to the mystical approach, we surrender ourselves. We surrender our fears. We surrender our emotions by becoming still and becoming a vessel that simply hears and listens and fills with the presence of God. And so this is a way of healing that you might say is about letting go and letting be. And it is not at all a passive approach, because if you've ever tried to do that repeatedly, you know it is hard work, right? It is hard work to stay the course, because our mind always wants to take over. Our ego always has agendas. We're always judging, and we're always figuring out. So to really allow that presence to fill us and to quietly direct us through surrender is indeed a very mystical path. And so we open to both of these paths to healing today. And you will know which one you are most drawn to. And so I invite you in this moment to just be aware that whatever your healing need or desire is, know that you will have a path that you will be led to. But know that no matter what your path is, it begins by realizing your healing isn't dependent just on you. You are never alone in your healing. And so when you empty yourself from the busyness of what you've done, of what you're going to do, how you're going to make it happen, when you release that and you open to the presence of God, that is truly when your healing begins.